Before we get started today, kiddos, make sure that you have your blue notes in front of you that we started in class. One side was our introduction to integers, and then the opposite side was our introduction to absolute value. And we gone over the top portion and even the bottom portion of that page, but we didn't do any of the problems in the middle. So we're going to use that right now and just refresh our memories about what absolute value means and how to use it. So we're still going to use our integers today. We're going to extend that knowledge even further and see how absolute value fits in. So just as a refresher, I know you have these filled in, but I just want to go over again what the absolute value means. And at the top, the absolute value is always the distance. So please start associating absolute value with distance. That's going to save you and help you out when you're working with some word problems as we go forward. So it is the distance that a number is from 0 on a number line. And we talked in school that you cannot have a negative distance. Distance is never negative. We don't measure any distance with a negative number. So when you are finding the absolute value of a positive integer or a negative integer, that absolute value is always positive because it's representing the distance from 0. So make sure that we are understanding that concept and understanding that if we have a negative 14, this is already on your notes, or a positive 14, they are both 14 steps away from 0, a distance of 14. So we're going to go down and actually do our short little calculations. I apologize for the rest of the page being grayed out, but I know you can still see them and you're looking at them on your own notes. So number 1 is asking for the absolute value of negative 8. If you remember that we said these two lines that go straight up and down vertically around a number, those are the lines or the symbol that means absolute value. So I read that as the absolute value of negative 8. And well, that just means how far is negative 8 away from 0? It is 8 steps. So the absolute value of negative 8 is 8. Number 2, the absolute value of 5 is 5. We ask ourselves, how far is 5 away from 0? It is 5 steps away. Here is a point where students automatically think opposites, and I do not want you to confuse absolute value and opposites. So absolute value and opposites are absolutely not the same. They are not the same. Absolute value means distance from 0. So back up to the top, the absolute value of 15. Well, 15 is 15 steps away from 0, so 15. And the absolute value of negative 13 is 13 because negative 13 is 13 spots away from 0 on the number line. Then we use our absolute value in some calculations, and these are very simple. They're pretty straightforward. My only advice is to make sure you take care of the absolute value first and turn it into what it should be before you try to do any calculations. So for instance, if we're looking at number 5, I've got to take care of my absolute value of negative 22 first. So I am going to change that into what it really is, which is 22. So we really have 22 plus 9, which is 31. Again, for number 6, let's take care of our absolute value first, because here's something that happens by mistake. You have been wonderfully trained and know by now that this negative on the outside of things means opposite. But for absolute value, remember, this is not really a negative 4. We have to write down what it really is before that negative can take effect. So like I said with our last problem, we're going to change our absolute value first. So that means the absolute value of 10 is 10, and the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. And then we can bring up that subtraction or negative sign. So what we really have is 10 minus 4, or 10 plus negative 4, which is a positive 6. Again, for number 7, you try it yourself And then if you want to pause the video and then check with me. So we're going to change absolute value of 7 to 7. The absolute value of 0 is 0. And then we're going to multiply both of those by 9. And we know that anything times 0 is 0. The absolute value in number 8 of negative 100 is 100. The absolute value of 5 is 5. And we are dividing, so that comes out to be 20. So moving on down to number 9 and 10 on our sheet here, we're just comparing using our less than, greater than, or equal to signs. So again, we want to change our absolute value first so that we really are representing the number of what it really is. So I'm gonna cross out my absolute value of negative 14 and replace that guy with 14. So now that I did that, I can look and see 6 and 14 is what I'm comparing. So obviously 6 is less than 14. With number 10, again, I'm going to change the absolute value of negative 17 to what it is, which is 17, and the absolute value of 17 to what it is, which is also 17. So I can see by doing that that we put an equal sign in the middle, that they are equal. And last but not least, number 11, same concepts. We're just looking at different types of rational numbers or different types of integers and trying to put them in order. And this time we're going greatest to least, which is descending order. We're going down, the biggest, then down to the smallest. So again, same advice as I always have, change your absolute value first. And I'm gonna do that by taking my absolute value of 16 and changing it to 16. The absolute value of negative 3 and changing it to what it is, which is 3. And the absolute value of negative 30 and changing it to what it is, 30. And now that I've done that, it's very clear. I'm going the greatest value. Looking at all of those, that would be 30. Put that first on our list, and I'm going to cross them out so I remember I used them. The next smallest on our list would be the positive 25. And then we've got our positive 16. We have our positive 3. Our negative 10, which is bigger than our negative 32, which is the smallest value in our list. And I'll put some commas here just so I can keep my numbers separated. So that's just a basic refresher of what absolute value means and how to use it in some calculations. We are going to get much fancier today, but I'm going to have you practice that just a little bit on your own first before I complicate things for you.